Alright, well, I didn't really want to make this video, but a few months ago I made a video about the Killing Floor 3 beta, which I didn't really like, as you can see from this thumbnail and title, and it seemed like a lot of other people didn't really like it either because the game got delayed for 4 months after the very mixed reception to that same beta. So I guess out of morbid curiosity and just one final hope, I decided to check out the full release of Killing Floor 3 to see if things have turned around and see if this game is good. Nope. No. I mean, it's slightly better than what it was, but it's more or less the same game I played 4 months ago. And that's to be expected. No major changes to how the game was going to work was going to happen in that short amount of time. Look, I'm going to TLDR my last video in case you didn't watch it. Characters being tied to certain perks, or now how they're called specialists, sucks. Executions are weird and terribly animated. Performance wasn't great. The atmosphere of the game is weird. Gun variety is small, although upgrading and tweaking them via the loadout system is kind of okay. Visual clutter is a problem. Movement felt unnatural, especially when it came to sprinting and dodging. On the more positive side, some of the monster redesigns are really cool, especially the siren, and the way the upgrade perk system works is actually really good. So, has any of that changed? Well, I think the game is a little bit less glitchy and movement feels a little better, I think. Although sliding feels almost useless and still doesn't feel like it fits in the game. And other players' movement, especially during Z time, looks very wonky. Okay, so I'm going to be upfront with you all. This is not a really awful game, but it is a bad Killing Floor game, if that makes sense. Because apart from the Z time and the designs of the monsters in the game, this is almost indistinguishable from any other mid-horde-based co-op shooter. Killing Floor 3 doesn't feel like an evolution of the Killing Floor formula. Apart from the perk upgrade system, it doesn't really do anything better that Killing Floor 2 did 9 or so years ago. In fact, most of it feels like a backsliding quality, and the things it does differently, like the specialist abilities, feels like it's stripping away the identity of what makes people like the series of games. I found myself thinking as I was playing this game for the review, like what could Tripwire have done to actually make Killing Floor 3 feel like an evolution? Because apart from the obscene monetization scheme and those stupid robots that they added, Killing Floor 2 is an extremely well-designed game. There isn't much that I could pick that you could actually improve design-wise to warrant putting in the effort to actually making a sequel. Yeah, you could put a new coat of paint on it and update the gore system, and like I mentioned a few times, the perk upgrade system actually does feel like an improvement, but apart from that, what can you do? Like, if we had a best case scenario here, would Killing Floor 3 even be that much of an improvement at the end of the day? Look, I'm not defending Tripwire here because at the end of the day, they decided to make this game and they made a lot of not very good design choices while they were at it. But, what were the fans of the series expecting from Killing Floor 3? I mean, we all know it wasn't this, but if you are a fan, like, what were you expecting from Killing Floor 3? So Killing Floor 3 begins with one of the most aggressively stupid tutorials I've played in a long while, and it's unskippable. It's only useful for if somehow Killing Floor 3 was the first FPS game that you've ever played. Look, everyone who has played Killing Floor already knows how all of this works, and if you've played an FPS before, you'd probably pick everything up you need to know about the game quicker by just playing the game rather than learning it from this tutorial. Like, I know there are some colossally stupid people out there, but do you really need to teach them how to aim down sights? One of the few additions to the game is the hub room, which I talked about in my last video. It feels unnecessary. The only really good addition this hub room brings is the ability to test out weapons in the firing range, which does help because this game does have weapon modifying and loadout system, which we'll get to. But other than that, the whole hub room feels unnecessary. To make this work, there needs to be something more. It makes me think about Space Marine 2, which is a game that has a similar hub world to this, but that game has an incredible amount of detail to take in from its world that you forget that it could have all just been a menu. Luckily, Killing Floor 3 lets you navigate pretty much everything from the menus, so all of this can almost be completely ignored. Almost, because every time you want to start a match, you have to run over to this VTOL every time, which is just ridiculous. Just let it be a menu. Like, come on. But while we're on the topic of menus, let's look at something that wasn't actually featured properly in the beta, and that is monetization. Killing Floor 3 features both a FOMO cash shop as well as a battle pass system, which while the battle pass does give some free items, you do need to purchase a premium pass to be able to get everything and most of the quote-unquote good stuff. On the free tiers, you are mostly getting stickers for your guns as well as one alternate outfit for each character. And yeah, cosmetics are tied to the specialist, which is just a way to split up outfits for characters in the FOMO store and stretch out design ideas. Why make one unlock for all characters when you can make 6 individual unlocks? In theory, you should 6 times your money if someone wants that one outfit on all 6 of the characters. For buying the game, you get the bare minimum here. You don't get access to the premium tiers of the battle pass, you don't really get much free currency. The game feels stingy in its monetization, especially as a premium title that you have to buy. And I absolutely despise that a game as shallow on content as this is already trying to ask for more money. So when it comes to gameplay, I don't have that much to add in terms of what I touched on my last video, but at least this time the matchmaking works and I can find other people pretty reliably, although I'm not a fan of the game dropping me into already half-finished matches. In other Killing Floor games this isn't so much of a problem because games went on for much longer, but games in Killing Floor 3 only go for around 20 minutes on normal and 30 minutes on hard, so joining halfway doesn't really feel long enough to get yourself immersed in the game. And honestly, even with the full-length matches, they do just feel a little bit too short overall. And yeah, this game doesn't yet feature the ability to choose game length, so it's all just the standard 5 waves plus the boss wave, which feels too short. The gunplay in general is pretty smooth, and it does feel like maybe some of the weapons have been punched up a little bit since the beta. I gave all of the perks a go, and I found myself enjoying Pyro and Berserker the most, which funnily enough are my 2 least favorite perks from the other games. Each perk is locked to having a maximum of 2 primary weapons and 1 sidearm, and each perk only has a choice of 4 weapons in total, although there is a loadout system that lets you spec out those weapons to your liking. Although unlocking attachments for your weapons are done via a kind of grindy part collection system, which I don't mind so much because it is a form of progression to work towards and doesn't feel, nearly as grindy as anything the other games have had. The problem with this system is that it doesn't really make up for the lack of weapon variety in this game. There is nowhere near as much freedom to express yourself via gameplay and loadouts in Killing Floor 3. And although that maybe will change over time as developers add more guns to the game, if there were as many guns in this game as there were the other 2 Killing Floor games, then this system might feel more robust, but at the moment it feels very bare bone. Made all the more bare bones by the fact that the weight system from the other games has been thrown out for the more simple 2-weapon primary loadout, which, is very disappointing. Perks now have an ultimate ability, which I don't hate the idea of in theory, but in practice they all look extremely goofy. Like I mentioned earlier, the perk upgrade system is much more robust than it has been in other games. Every 2 levels or so you get a choice between 2 or 3 perk choices. That also can be upgraded to 3 or so tiers on top of it, so those choices could be made stronger. This is probably the only thing that I can point to where Killing Floor 3 actually improves as a sequel. I like it. It's quicker to unlock things and it feels much more varied than the other games. Again, it's just kind of a disappointment that it's tied to this game. Somehow this game launched without text chat. That's weird, but there is a design decision that actually made me mad, and that is the leaderboard. The leaderboard is not translucent and it stops your character from moving if you dare to look at it. Are you fucking kidding me? This is an insane design decision, considering Killing Floor 2 had this over a decade ago. Being able to move while you look at the leaderboard. Like, why can't I do this? Killing Floor 3, why are you like this? Alright, so let's talk about the art style and performance, which kind of go hand in hand here. This game runs pretty poorly. Frame drops, mini freezes are pretty common, especially as the game gets more hectic. Turning off Lumen, which is an option that is on by default, is a good way to mitigate some of the performance issues. I also had to turn the graphics down to medium just so I could keep a consistent frame rate when shit hit the fan. The problem is this game doesn't even really look that good. Even at max settings, there isn't anything that makes me think, yeah, I know why I'm getting performance issues here, but no, the game doesn't, look that good and it doesn't run good, which leads to the art style and kind of the atmosphere of the game. Killing Floor 3 absolutely feels the weakest in terms of atmosphere. Killing Floor 1 had a very grindhousey horror atmosphere, while Killing Floor 2 had a sci-fi B-movie slasher vibe. Killing Floor 3 is just straight up sci-fi and I don't really like it. From the gun designs to the character designs and their kits and gadgets, I feel like they've overdone it. while at the same time there isn't really a strong sense of style here. It just feels like generic future shit. Although the music tries its hardest to establish that Killing Floor style, it isn't enough. The music this time around, instead of being a compilation of metal music from a variety of artists, seems to be an actual soundtrack this time around, which I think people will dislike this change, but for me, I actually enjoyed the music in this game. The main menu track in particular is an absolute banger, but it's not enough to tie the atmosphere of the game together, unfortunately. But I don't blame the music for trying. It's doing its job, it's just the rest of the game that is slacking. In conclusion, do I recommend you buy Killing Floor 3? No. Not at all. Look, even if we ignore the fact that this feels like an inferior product to the previous entries in this series and treat it as just, another random horde shooter, I still wouldn't recommend it in its current state. There is too much wrong with this game and the asking price is too high for what they're currently delivering. The performance issues on PC are shocking. There is a strong lack of visual clarity within the game. The game's atmosphere feels bland and the characters are so annoying. But it's the lack of getting basic design decisions correct that absolutely baffles me. A leaderboard that is difficult to quickly check because you can't see the game and it stops your character from moving and putting you in danger. Needing to make your way to the VTOL in the hub world anytime you want to start a game. Having the matchmaking drop you into a game halfway done and no option to change any of those settings of how you get match made. A lack of weapon variety or any way to express your playstyle that has any depth other than the perk system. But if we add back onto the fact that this is meant to be a sequel to one of the most solidly made co-op horde shooters, and that there were 10 years to take the learnings of that game to try and make something better, then it has well and truly missed the mark. If you're looking for a solid co-op horde experience, then may I recommend Helldivers 2, which is the exact same price as this game, or Killing Floor 2, which is $20 cheaper and has thrice the amount of content of this game, and a pretty decent custom map modding scene that adds on top of that. Look, I don't think Killing Floor 3 is a lost cause. I think that if Tripwire work on this game and work on it hard for at least a year, then I think eventually it'll be a game worth playing here, but not now, not in its current state. So there is a 1-year roadmap for future content of this game, and they are planning on eventually unlinking specialists with perks, which should never have been a thing from the start. New weapons and mods, which should have already been a thing from the start. God, does this feel like I'm looking at an early access game, but it isn't. Not that it's much of an excuse. This little ongoing improvements bit at the bottom sure looks like it includes a bunch of things that should have been in a fully launched 1.0 title. That is all I have to say on Killing Floor 3. I did not enjoy making this video. I would have rather made a video about a good game, but the state of this game kind of hurt too much. So thank you for watching this video. If you liked the video, then please leave it a like and consider subscribing if you're new. Hopefully whatever video I make next will be on an actual good game this time. I'd rather be lifting games up that deserve it rather than bringing them down. Look, if you have played Killing Floor 3, then let me know what you think of the game in the comments. Many thanks to my YouTube members Controlled Killer, Yellow, Melodia, and Jingles, you absolute legends. If you think my content is worth supporting financially, you can do that via a YouTube membership. Perks are on the screen. I also have a free to enter Discord as well as the Steam curator page. If you want to join any of those, links are also in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you all next time.